There's a difference between doing something wrong and feeling like you did something wrong. And if you can just find someone that can tell you it's fine, then it's basically fine, right?
Because it's not always the big sins that matter, like when I slept with my SAT proctor and ruined her marriage. No, sometimes it's the small sins that tarnish the soul the most.
All right, so this is one of those episodes where the premise is doing a lot of heavy lifting. You've got Danny spiraling over guilt, you've got a priest who is somehow making that worse, and you've got Mindy trying to fake her way through Catholicism in real time. And that combination is either going to be really funny or completely ridiculous. So with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the 19th episode of the third season of the Mindy Project, titled Confessions of a Catho-holic. Written by Jack Burdett and directed by Ike Barinholtz. Morgan's directing this one. So let's find out how this one stacked up, starting with the episode overview. So we start the episode with Danny giving confession to a very old priest. Now, what's going to happen to this very old priest? Well, he's going to die before he can absolve Danny of his sins. And that is going to lead us into a very odd episode where Danny is chasing this absolution from Stephen Colbert. But first, we're going to talk about the baby in Mindy's belly being a boy. Now, she was apparently positive that it was going to be a girl, which we've kind of talked about before in other episodes. But she's going to really double down on this by saying, biologically, he's a boy right now, but who knows what she'll identify as. I could still win. Now, this was just like a funny little joke bit in 2015, but now it's like literally a joke that could get people up in arms. Go figure. We're also going to get introduced to the B story here as we find out that Jeremy is putting on a one-man show. It's all about his immigration story. And Mindy is going to sarcastically be like, what's it called? Fievel? And then he's like, I don't know that name. No, the name of the show is An American Tale, which is it's just hilarious. But back to the A story though. And Danny is freaking out. He needs absolution and he wants Mindy to join him at the priest's funeral. Because at this funeral, they're going to be able to meet the new priest. I mean, he even says, don't you want to meet the guy who's going to baptize our baby? To which Mindy replies, who says he's getting baptized? I kind of want to raise him Jewish so he can get ahead in life. Now, I will admit that this joke absolutely got me, but I also couldn't help but notice Mindy does a lot of these types of jokes. Anyway, we're going to meet the new priest, who just happens to be Stephen Colbert playing Father Mike. And unsurprisingly, Mindy thinks he's hot, as she does with every male guest star that comes on, except maybe Seth Rogen. But this new priest is nuts. He tells everyone his body count at the other priest's funeral. And by body count, I mean not people he's killed, women he slept with, which is apparently 275. And he's apparently got a sleeve of tattoos, but these big sins, these sleeping with lots of women, getting tattoos, they're nothing compared to the little ones that pile up, like dating outside your religion or birth control. Those are just as straight a path to hellfire as all the cool stuff he used to do. Now, we're going to get a lot of Mindy doesn't understand Catholicism jokes in this episode. For instance, when she meets Father Mike, she calls him Friar. She also calls him your magistrate. But when Mindy's not around, Danny tells Father Mike Mindy is Catholic. Now, this is interesting because usually the plots where one of them lies about something and the other one has to go along with it is usually Mindy lying about something and then Danny has to go along with it. But in this case, it's Danny lying about something, and she has to back him up, which she does without hesitation. Now back to the B story, Jeremy just keeps messing up his lines. The specific one that they show him messing up constantly is his last name. So he ends up enlisting Morgan's help. Morgan's gonna be there to help him with his lines. And the only reason we're finding out about any of this is because Mindy is there as well. See, she's there because she wants advice about Father Mike. And Jeremy's gonna convince her the priest is the problem, not her. And so Mindy assumes that this means that Jeremy thinks that she should kill the priest. Of course, he isn't saying that. He's saying that she should befriend the priest. So Mindy texts Father Mike and invites him to dinner. And to remind him who she is, she uses the Swami emoji, which is both funny and racist. I guess those things can still coexist if done right. But when Father Mike responds that he couldn't turn down a dinner from a good Catholic woman, Mindy knows something is up. So when Mindy tells Danny about the dinner, Danny has to tell her about the whole Catholicism thing, and he's just like, man, I wish we had just gone to that stupid show, meaning Jeremy's play. But Mindy's worried now. She doesn't know enough about Catholicism, so she enlists Morgan's help as well. She's gonna ask him to look up Catholic stuff for her and text her as she asks them, and Morgan agrees. Why? Because he's, quote, at this boring play, and it'll give him something to do. All of which is said in front of poor Jeremy. But Danny's still really freaking out though. He actually breaks the vase in his hand when the doorbell rings and yells at Mindy, "Be cool!" And Mindy's like, "You be cool, psycho." But before we see what happens with Father Mike, we head back to the B story and we're watching Jeremy's one-man show. It's about as terrible as you would expect. But after a little bit of Jeremy's play, we head back over to the A story, where Father Mike is saying grace before they eat. Now, we don't see the whole prayer, but it wraps up with, "And may all sinners burn forever in the fires of hell." Amen. This guy's intense. He is very excited about dinner though, because apparently the nun who usually cooks him dinner is blind, so he ends up eating a lot of wax. Now, as we know, Morgan has already agreed to help Jeremy with his lines when he forgets them, but he's also agreed to help Mindy look up Catholic stuff when she texts him about it. And when Mindy asks for a verse from the Bible, what Morgan texts her, and she reads it as if it's a verse, is, "You spilled my scotch. Go sit in the cupboard," which Father Mike thinks is a real deep cut, but it's actually just a line from Jeremy's play. Now at the show, Beverly, Tamra, Morgan, and Bergdahl are all sitting next to each other in a row. However, Bergdahl's asleep and wearing a toupee, by the way. Morgan is texting Mindy, and Beverly is smoking a cigarette. Now Jeremy's lost his place and he's yelling up to Morgan like, "Hey, help me, what's the next line?" But the help isn't coming because Morgan is feeling more loyalty to Mindy. Like he's like, I gotta go help Mindy. He wants to leave the area. But him getting up to leave sets off a chain of events. Beverly's gonna get her cigarette knocked into Bergdahl's toupee, which starts to smoke heavily, which sets off the smoke detectors, and is shortly thereafter followed by the sprinklers, drenching everyone. So we head back to the dinner, and Mindy's in the middle of saying how Eve is actually one of the real housewives of Eden. Father Mike seems to like this analogy, but he's like, I gotta go pee. And this is when Mindy realizes she didn't get the condoms out of the bathroom, which will lead to the most ridiculous part of the episode. She decides she's gonna go into the bathroom to get the condoms while Father Mike is peeing. And then Danny backs her up on this. What in the world is going on? Thankfully for them, Father Mike pisses for a really long time. So Mindy is able to get the condoms and then hide them in the cookie jar. I'm sure that won't come up later though. At this point, they feel like the dinner's gone well, and they want to get Father Mike out, but he wants to stay and play board games, which they do. Now, as they're playing, he's gonna tell Danny that he thought Danny was dating a godless, sex-obsessed woman, but that can't be Mindy, he likes Mindy. So it must have been an ex. And Danny's like, yeah, it was an ex. That's great. And Mindy is agreeing as well. But clearly, Mindy is a little bit hurt by it. And that strikes me as a bit odd because she's been playing along this whole time, but this is where she draws the line. Also, who is this priest to judge anyone? In this same conversation, he literally implies that he had sex with Madonna on a luggage carousel, which is cool, but also, why are you being so super judgy? But Mindy's gonna start defending the ex by saying that she's not a sex maniac, she's sex positive. And Danny's trying to get her to stop, but she continues anyway. She's like, the ex was hot. And Father Mike is gonna be like, I heard she was pear-shaped with small breasts, which is a super weird thing for a priest to say. But Mindy just continues to defend this ex, right? But she's defending herself by saying that the ex is more like two pears stacked on top of each other. To which Father Mike says, that's a butternut squash. I don't know why that tickled me so much, but that was my favorite joke of the episode. But Danny screws this whole thing up by saying, I was never gonna marry this ex or anything, So Mindy, clearly hurt, says she's going to bed, but Father Mike still won't leave. He wants dessert. And when Danny's like, well, we don't really have any dessert, he goes, can you make me some? But Danny's gonna sack up. He tells Father Mike, you know what? I don't feel guilty about being with Mindy, and that they're gonna have a kid. And Mindy is overhearing this and she's happy. And amazingly, Father Mike is gonna say that this is the worst night of his life. I mean, that's a pretty privileged life if this is the worst night you've ever had. And he's gonna tell Danny his excommunication letter will be coming in the mail. And then he finds the cookies in the cookie jar and says, oh my God, this is the lair of Lucifer. So goofy. And then after all this nonsense, Mindy's gonna come back in and she's gonna be like, I wanna raise my kid Catholic, which appeals to Father Mike's need to have a younger congregation. So everything's all good now. Kinda hard to buy that one. But that's not the end. We end with them all watching Jeremy's one-man show in the conference room. But that's the whole episode. Let's see how it ranked.
Oh, rank.
The rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh out loud. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive into the rankings, I just want to say if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. So the story is basically, how can Danny remain Catholic in spite of all the stuff he's doing? It's a decent story. It's executed well in some parts, absurdly in others. I gave it a 3.5. So that brings us to acting. Stephen Colbert was really good in this, I thought. I was surprised how well he did with such a weird character. Obviously, everyone else was good as well. It was a solidly acted episode. I gave it a 4.5. So that brings us to dialogue. And as usual, it was a funny episode. I've seen better from this show, but I've certainly seen worse as well, as far as dialogue is concerned. The B story left a little to be desired, though. I felt like it should have been funnier. I gave it a 3.75. So that brings us to episode coherence. They do this thing in movies and shows a lot, so it's not just this episode. But why do they always have a guy peeing for like 20 minutes? And who in their right mind would go into the bathroom while the priest is peeing in it? And since when is Danny's character agreeing to something like that? And how would the priest not have noticed that Mindy came in? I mean, really. And there's more than that too. But also, since when is Jeremy writing one-man shows? And I mean, that's fine. It's just a silly thing to have as like a side story, so whatever. But it just felt like the escalations in both stories weren't earned. I gave it a 2.5. So that brings us to character relatability. I cannot relate to going into the bathroom while somebody is peeing to remove condoms. I think being concerned about being accepted by your community, in this case religion, is relatable. So I'm with the episode on that. It was hard to relate to anything in the B story though, that was kind of out there. Overall, I gave it a 2.5. So some kind of mediocre scores here, but a decent laugh counter will keep it in the top 3 tiers. And as happens a lot with Mindy, it does have a decent laugh counter. It got me 16 times, which means I got a 32.75, which puts it into, I'd watch it again. As for the series average, it goes down a little bit to a 36.22, which means it stays in the holy grail. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score in the comments. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Mindy Project ranking episodes or any of my other sitcom or movie ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, check out my website at therankpodcast.com, where you can also email me at info or john@therankpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankpodcast. Or if you just want to go there and be a free member, you can get my laugh counter breakdowns and see exactly what jokes made me laugh. But I will leave you with this. What did Father Mike tell Danny to do for absolution? He told him to do a couple Hail Mindys.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
Instead of Hail Marys. Okay. What did Father Mike tell Danny to do for...
Cut!
What did Danny... What?
Cut!
What did Father Mike tell Danny to do for absolution? Do a couple Hail...
Cut!
Take 3.
He told him to do a couple Hail Man... Ah, man.
We're gonna be here a while.